Hello and welcome back to these Visionaire tutorials. My name's Andy and we're going to carry on going through the game that I'm putting together at the moment for the Visionaire competition to become the next demo game. If you've looked at the other tutorials, then this is continuing on from there. It's actually been a while in real-time terms since I last recorded one of these. And if you've just been doing the latest tutorial, you'll see that the first thing you notice is there's been some more graphics drawn. So I've gone from the really early sketch stuff that I usually put together first to this kind of blocked out grayscale version. I will be doing a lot more to the artwork by the end of the game, but I find this helps me to get all the positions exactly right. I won't change the actual layout usually at this point, it'll just, the graphics will improve as we go along. So we've got this first entrance room. We've got the calling the doorway room as well here, and there's quite a bit of work I've already done here in laying out some of the items like the steps. You can see there, it's like one whole unit, and laying out things like the pillar, and what else have we got up there? The foreground stuff. This is just like the frames that kind of give you the feeling of something in the foreground as well. So done quite a lot of extra artwork just to start getting things closer to how it should be, but I've also started laying out a lot of things here. You can also see some of the areas as well I've done, and I tend to use this naming format where you put area underscore or graphics underscore, or if it's a door to another place, door underscore. So you can see here the fountain area, you can see it shows the outline of them, the shelves, the torch, the flag, the shield at the bottom with the little Visionaire logo on, and the area of the door where the lights come from. So we'll carry on. So the cave entrance room is one I'm going to deal with in this particular tutorial, and the kind of general overview you'll probably remember from the other ones. I tend to end up waffling and going off on a few different tracks, but the general idea of this tutorial is to introduce the concepts of moving between two different rooms, so using doors to move between different rooms, and also some helpful layout things and setting up items ready to be picked up, setting up kind of areas that can change, things like waypoints on the floor, setting up items that are only kind of visible once you've looked at another item and things like that. So the first thing I'm going to do is, I've got some more graphics to still add to this room. It's actually going to be closed off at the right here, so you can't get through. So there's a few things that I want to pull across from Flash into here. So the first thing that I'm going to create an object for, it's some graphics and it's some rubble that's going on the floor over at the right hand side. Just move that up the stack a little bit. I'll show you why in a moment. And I've already outputted the things for this. I'll just quickly show you the Flash file. So you can see here in the Flash file, this has got all of the items in it for this particular room. So you can see there's a rope around the skeleton's waist. The door's in its closed position here. We're going to go into that in a more advanced tutorial about a door that's actually triggered by a switch here on the floor. You can see some other items I'm going to be adding here. There's like a pot in the background. There's the handle of a sword here jammed in the rubble. So these are the things I'm going to add, and you can see these rubble sections. There's two separate sections. There's a front section there, and there's a back section there. And the reason they're separate is there's actually some animation to come on here. You can see this animation of this falling out and crashing to the floor. So I've been putting some of the basics of the animation down as well, ready to start pulling all of those things together. So I'm going to pull these assets in anyway. I've already exported these using my preferred method, which is actually to export them as the full size of the particular room, which means they're automatically positioned for you, I suppose, when they load in, because the registration point's the top left. So if, for example, the pot in the background, that pot there will actually end up covered by lots of other things. So you can see there it is at the back of all the rubble. But just to get the actual graphic of the pot out, what I prefer to do is hide everything else, of course. The green's just the stage background I've chosen here, just so I can tell that nothing else is in the background. And I would normally export that image, and you can see I've already done it there, item underscore pot, and that exports, you can see from that little thumbnail, just the pot but with completely transparent outside. It is a slightly bigger file size to do it that way. I think I mentioned this in a previous tutorial, but the big advantage there is that when you actually bring that item in, we create a item underscore pot. We select that new object, and we go to image, choose an image file, and select that item underscore pot PNG. You can see it appears in exactly the right place, so I don't have to go through the rigmarole of like lining this thing up. And you can see there the borders there of the whole frame. So it's really it's useful that if you're doing your layout in something like Flash. It also means when I come to do the final artwork, all I need to do here is just kind of spruce everything up, put all the kind of hand-drawn elements in here that are going to go, and then just re-export that same asset again. It'll be in exactly the right place. So I prefer to do it that way. It does make your file size slightly bigger, but it is mostly transparent pixels, so it's only a marginal extra. Okay, so I've brought the pot in there. I was about to bring the rubble in before I started doing that, so I'm going to import the rubble, which I've also exported. Cave rubble there. See, that sits in front of it, and that's because this cave rubble is in front of that item pot. I could bring that further up the stack, so it's just under it. See, if I go one further up, just watch the pot here, it brings that in front of it, and we don't want that, we want it to be behind it. The reason it's there as a separate item, by the way, if I use this preview tab, is when the character comes over here, it's going to be an item that's going to be able to be picked up and taken into your inventory. I tend to always name those things item if they're going to be pickable up. We then have to specify them over here in items as well, but just for the room that it's in, I always call them items so I can see them. So when he picks it up, we'll be able to hide it as if it's being picked up, and the game will remember that it's been hidden next time we come to this room. So we'll go through all of that as well, picking up an item. But for the time being, let's finish laying this room out. So another thing that we need is the other graphics, which is the big chunk of rock. Remember that I just quickly showed you here, this chunk of rock that is actually a bit of animation. I've exported all the frames of that animation. So what I'm going to do is actually in Visionaire, this is going to be called Anim Rock Fall, because it's going to be an animation, but I'm going to select the static image for this object to be the first frame of that. And again, a folder structure thing, I know I've talked about this a lot in the other tutorials, is keeping this tidy with naming formats that make sense is really helpful even at this early stage. So I'm currently in Fantasy Quest, the name of my project, assets, rooms, cave, which is this first room, and then within there I've got a folder of animations which are going in this cave, and the one I'm loading in now is Rubble Fall. At the moment I'm just selecting the first frame, because here I'm actually selecting just an image to represent this object. I'll later select an animation and load all the frames in, but I'm just selecting the first one so that the very first frame of it appears. You'll notice as well it's just gone behind all the others because of the order. You can see graphics rubble is in front of rockfall, so I'm just going to move that up, and there you go, it pings into place in front of it. So this particular object here is represented by this image file. It's also going to have an animation, and you create a separate little animation block for it here. I usually call it the same thing, anim underscore rockfall, and then I add the frame sequence to that animation. So just select the first one, and because we're loading it in as an animation, it'll load them all. We're going to use the alpha channel that's on there, and you should see, hopefully, if I bring this bottom part of the window up a little bit so you can see. If I play through here now, you can see there it is falling. It loops and loops it. I'm just going to slow it down a little bit. Again, the other tutorials talk a little bit about speeding up and slowing down these things. If I put it really, really high, then it would be a lot slower. It's kind of getting it right for the weight, and there's also that kind of, I've tried to add a little bit of comedy timing at the end where you get the crack and it looks like it's all finished, and then the other bit falls off. So it's going to be just trial and error that really to get the speed feeling right. There's going to be another big bit of animation I need to do there. The character's actually going to pull out the sword, and then have to jump out of the way as that crashes down next to them, just to add a little bit of excitement to it. So we're not going to do anything with that animation yet. We've actually, for this anim rockfall object, we've got the animations here, which is this. It's just played through, and the image, which is the static thing that the player will see most of the time. The other thing you need to remember to set up when you add all these objects in, let's start with the rubble. If I go to graphics rubble, that's all this stuff that's in the background, is to actually set an object area so that its name appears and things when you mouse over it. So if you go to properties first of all, we want the word rubble to appear when someone mouses over it. We also want to set the position that you want the player to walk to when they look at it. So I'm going to put that about here so he walks quite close to it, and I'm going to have him face it in this direction. And then the last thing to do is to actually set an active area for that. So I'm going to click it and then just draw around this whole area. And for the player, I don't want them to think that that big rock at the front is any different to the rest of the rubble. So it's a nice surprise when they pull out the sword and the whole thing comes crashing down. So I'm just going to, doesn't have to be particularly accurate this, just so that users will mouse over that area and the word rubble will come up. Don't forget to do that for your other items as well. So the pot, just quickly draw around the edge of the pot. And this is the active area for the mouse, so you don't need to draw around here to the rock, just go to the bit that's actually visible, so that'll make sense for a user when they're mousing over it. And the rock fall itself, I'm not going to name it anything, it's not going to be visible, it's not going to have a... it's all part and parcel of this rubble area, that's how I want it to show. So I will just quickly save that, and we'll launch that room. So there's the character, and when they walk over here now, I forgot to put a name on the pot, but you should see there's the rubble, and this is no different, this is all part of the rubble area. If I look at that, then the character moves to the position that I asked him to. If I look at the pot, I didn't put an area in. It's a good way of, it's a good bug test actually. When you look at items, if your character walks off in totally the wrong direction, you've probably done what I've just done, which is forgotten to set a position for it. So he's actually trying to walk to 0, 0, which is off the screen and outside of his walkable area. So I'm going to set the object position for that. Pop it up here, nice and close to it. The actual animation I've done for him picking things up at the moment, I've only done one of them, and it's when he's facing away from you and he uses his right hand. So I'm going to put him kind of here, so that when he goes to pick this up, the correct hand comes out. I want to face it to the back, and we're going to call this ancient pot. Save that, and just try that again now. So if I look at this ancient pot, you can see that he moves over to it now. If I click on it, he'll move to it. Same as the rubble, click on it, he'll move to his position, so that's much better. You can see there's other things where I've set areas like the drain cover, and the skeleton, and the chest, and the stairs, and things like that. And the walkable areas are set so that he walks in front of that chest. If I walk around to the stairs, he walks behind it, so you get a good feeling of the depth there, from stairs to in front of the chest. And that was simply set up. I did something in the other tutorials about this with the way systems. So if you see the way borders there, the green area is the place that the character is allowed to walk, and the way points, these little paths help the computer to work out, using the Visionaire engine, the best path for the character to walk between certain places. So I've put a few down here, a bit of trial and error, so that he doesn't do weird things like walk halfway to the centre of the screen then walk back. He'll follow this shorter path, and if he's over this side of the screen, you don't want him to be going over here before he comes back. And so a bit of trial and error with those. I'm not great at laying them out myself, I just have to kind of see what fits basically. So there's a couple of other things we probably need to add to this room. One of the other items that's going to be able to be picked up, I'm going to create a new item there, is a piece of rope that's around the skeleton's waist. And again, in my usual style, I've created that as a full image the whole size of the room with the rope in it. So when I open that up, it automatically positions exactly around his waist. I don't have to move it into position or anything. What I'm going to do with this one actually, I'm not going to set it up in the usual way. What I want to happen is the skeleton is part of the background graphic. So we're not going to move the skeleton, it's not going to animate or anything like that, but the area around the skeleton, which I've drawn out there, what I want to happen is the rope I don't want to be visible at the start. So even though you'll see it, let me just save that so you can see it. You can see the rope. I don't want it to appear as the word rope. First of all, I don't want the player to know that that's something they're going to pick up until they've looked at the skeleton. So I'm going to set up a little bit of logic that basically doesn't allow the rope writing to appear until they've looked at the skeleton. So if the player will look at the skeleton, there'll be some kind of response from the character saying it's a bony old skeleton with a piece of rope around its waist, at which point rope will be available as something to click on. So that little bit of logic is really simple to set up. We just need to set up a couple of separate things here. So I've got the item rope. I haven't given it a name or anything, it's just an actual item that we're going to be able to hide when somebody picks it up, like that. But what we want to do is, above that, we want to create an area for the rope. Now, the advantage to doing it this way, I find, is that I can then draw out a particular area for this rope that is unrelated to the graphics layer at all, and once you've created that, that's the thing you give the word, the actual name to, rope, and you give the position to that as well, so that you want the character to walk to there when they look at the rope, and you want him to face the direction of it. And we're going to set up a condition for that area. We don't want that condition to be visible to start with. So on this area rope, we're going to have a new condition called rope underscore vis, and I always use that underscore vis to represent visible conditions, and I want that to start as false. So the initial value of rope underscore vis is false, and then to actually make that affect the visibility of this, this is where you select that condition. So it says the object is only active if this condition is true. So you actually point it to, we're in the cave entrance room, rope vis. Okay, so because rope vis is set to false, when I save and run this, you can still see the graphic, but the word rope doesn't appear when you mouse over it. Now if I go back and go to the conditions and turn this to true, save it, come back in, you'll now see the word rope as well as the word skeleton. So I'm going to be able to switch that true false switch after the character's looked at the skeleton. So we'll set that up quickly. So we go to the area skeleton. When he looks at this skeleton, we're going to set in like that, the actions for this skeleton. When the character looks at this skeleton, we want him to say something. So let's say an old skeleton with a rope belt or something like that for now, just for the time being. I will be improving the text as we go along, it won't stay like that. The current character is going to say that, so let's just save that and test that first. So when you look at the skeleton, I've still got to sort out this UI because it doesn't hide yet on this particular screen. So an old skeleton with a rope belt. So he says that, that's good. We've still got the rope visible, so what we want to do is go back to the item rope, area rope, and we want to change that condition, rope vis to false to start with. Just save that and check again. So it's not visible at the start. We go and look at it, like that, an old skeleton with a rope belt, and at that point after he said that we want to make the area rope condition to true. So there we go on the actions for the skeleton. Once you've looked at the skeleton, he displays that text, and then we want to change a condition, and the condition we want to change is rope viz, and we want to set it to true, which it's already by default set there. So if I save that now, press F9, you can see the rope isn't visible at all at the start, so when I'm mousing over it there's no rope visible. I look at the skeleton, an old skeleton with a rope belt, and if I move the mouse down you can see that rope's now visible, so then you can set up an action on that to look at the rope or pick up the rope and things like that as well. So it's just a way of staggering how a player finds all the things in your room, so everything's not available until they've done a little bit more poking around and looking at things. It's a good way of kind of increasing the play time of one room, giving people a couple of more hints and puzzles to look at before they get rewarded with absolutely everything. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do then is we're going to what are we going to do? I'm going to add the sword in as well, and I'll do the sword slightly differently, just to show you, I suppose, the other way of exporting a particular a small item like that. My preferred one, as I've mentioned lots of times, is to export the whole size of this, but the other way of doing it is just to export that one item. Now if I go export PNG sequence, this is specific to Flash, but this is an item in its own right. It's its own movie clip, they call them in Flash. But you can use the command export PNG sequence and export a single frame. But you can see here the one I did earlier. Here's one I made earlier, item_sword, and that will actually export just the sword area. You can see 93 by 92 pixels. And export that. And the difference here is now, if I just zoom out so you can see this, when I import this item, so I'm going to create a new item called sword, and I go to the image that's going to represent that one and select item sword, you'll see it doesn't seem to have appeared anywhere, but for the more observant of you, see the tiny little point appear here. This is one of the reasons why I tend to export the whole side of the room. I've now got to get that item sword and use this tool here to place the image, and you can actually move it into position. You can see as well some of the other things I've got there, which is the edge of this door, so that the character can actually walk out from these stairs at the start. Just a little visual trick there. But this sword now, I'm going to have to position it exactly where I need it. You can see it's also going behind things, so I need to move it up in the stack in front of the rubble, but behind the rock fall. It's going to actually be sticking out there, so when the player pulls it out, it's all going to come crashing down. That's actually going to be quite complex. In the big game that I've been making for the last couple of years, there's quite a few instances of this kind of thing, where the player character walks up to an item, and then there's some quite complex animation. He's going to actually pull and tug at that sword, and then the sword will come flying out, he'll fall backwards, and then this rock will fall over. It's quite a complex bit of animation to do by hand. But it's also, we're going to have to swap quite a few things out in Visionaire, because you're going to want the object there, you're then going to want to hide it, you're going to want it to be part of a larger animation and things, but for the time being, just so we can get the game kind of to a playable state, we're going to put the sword in. We'll give it the usual name. I'm actually going to call it handle, because we don't want the player to think it's a sword straight away. They maybe don't know what it is if it's tucked in that far. And we want them to move to this position here, right next to it. When they walk over, I want them to be facing to the right, and we're going to need to set a visible area. And again, it's a trick that LucasArts used throughout Monkey Island and Monkey Island 2. Tiny little visible areas that are just big enough for a cursor, so that if someone isn't looking properly, then they might not spot it first time round. Just to give you an idea of what's going to happen in this room, when the player arrives down these stairs, this door is going to be closed. Actually, I've just left it open now so that we can link these two rooms up. door's going to be closed, and this drain cover, only when a player walks on it, the drain cover actually sinks down like a switch which opens the door. So it's kind of like a classic Zelda puzzle where you've got or a Tomb Raider puzzle where you've got to keep the weight on this in order for that door to stay open. As soon as you step off, the door's going to slam closed, so there's going to be some nice actions and animation triggers going on in that as well. So you need to kind of find something heavy enough to put on there. A lot of this rubble's too heavy, and it involves quite a complex set of puzzles involving the sword, the chest. The chest's full of gold coins. You need something to scoop them up with, which you use the pot for. So there's lots of things to do in this room with only a few objects. And again, this is all part and parcel of because I'm designing this game to be a good demo for Visionaire, not just in the capabilities of the engine itself, but also to give people ideas of the kind of stuff that I feel makes a good adventure puzzle game, and to actually give a game that works as a game in its own right, I suppose, because I know a lot of kind of game engines come with demos that it's not really an enjoyable game to play, and I think that's kind of my main aim with this, is to make a game that I'm proud of as a game in its own right, let alone it being a potential demo game for an engine. So having said all of that, the sword itself, you can see it's listed as handle there, and he moves over to the correct place, and he's just in the right spot to kind of grab hold of that now. So when it comes to me doing the animation, there'll be some swapping out and things I have to do there, but we'll get onto that later. So after about almost probably half an hour of me going through some of the basics here, I'm going to get on to what I said the tutorial was about, which is moving between rooms. So I'm going to actually create a door, a portal area if you like, that will be the thing that transports you to the next room. And that's really simple to do. I tend to call them door, and I usually put underscore and then the place it's going to. Annoyingly, the other room is called doorway, which is maybe not a good name for a room. In fact, I'm going to change that now. I'm going to call it stair room, because it's got these stairs in it. Of course, my folder structure probably isn't called stair room when I go and look at it, but that is a much better name now I come to think of it for this particular room. So that's a door. I sometimes put door to stair room, something like that. And there's no graphic or anything for it. It's actually just going to be an area, a kind of active area that will let the player transition to another room. So I'm just going to kind of draw that in fairly quickly. These are all going to be hooked up to those actions to do with whether this door's open or not, in the same way we hid that rope belt on the skeleton. This active door area will be hidden until they've worked out the puzzle to open the door and things, but for the simplicity's sake I'm going to have this set up to take the person to the other room. So door to stair room, again we want to set the position that we want the character to walk to, which is right at the edge of the walkable area. And we're going to set him to be facing in that direction when he heads out, and we're going to set up some actions for that particular door. You can name your doors if you want to. I tend not to, but one thing I do with the door is to change the cursor so that the person knows it's a door. At the moment, if I run that, I've got a feeling I've got another door in the way I have. It's a stone door there. Let me just quickly change that. So stone door open. We must have an area on it somewhere. I can't actually see it. Let's go down this list and look for another door. Area stone door. Yeah, that's what's actually showing up. Let me just hide that. Let's just delete that area completely because that's not the one we want to use. So the door to the stair room, that's the important bit. So from there we're going to set an action. From a previous tutorial, I already set this up in the stair room. I think that there's a door here, which is actually this whole edge of the screen will take you to the other place. So on this door that goes back to the cave, we set up these two actions. So when the player's cursor enters the object area, we set the cursor to the door cursor, and in other tutorials I've shown how to set up different cursors. So you've actually got this orange cursor and a cursor which is the arrow going through a door. So here in this stair room on our door to cave area, you can see that there. Oh look, antivirus, postpone that. The door to cave area, the actions for this, entering the object area and leaving to change the cursors, we can actually select these actions. You can hold shift and select multiple ones. We can copy them from this particular door, go to the cave entrance room, go to the door here to stair room, and paste into the actions the same actions. And if we just save that and run, you should see now that you get the little arrow through the door icon, and then when it leaves the area it goes back to the normal cursor. So that's how I tend to represent doorways. You could say door as well in the same way this says ancient port. It could say leave room or something, but that's entirely up to you. It's just a personal choice. So if I click this now, he'll walk to the position that I set him to and face that direction. And at that point I actually want it to change to the other room. So what I'm going to set up on the other room, first of all, the stair room, is the door to cave. That will have its own position that the character walks to before it transitions to. I'm going to move that back a little bit actually, so it looks like he's just come from off screen. And you'll also see there's an alignment set. That's which direction the character will be facing when he comes to that particular area. So what we'll do here is on the cave entrance room, door to the stair room, we're going to set up an action there. So we've got the cursor changes as one action. Another action we're going to do is if a character walks to that particular thing, then what we want to happen is we want to change scene. Double click change scene, and we're going to change the scene. We're going to fade to it. It'll take the current character with us. We want the character to end up in the new room facing in the right direction, and we're going to tell him to be stood at stair room, where is it? Door to cave. So he's going to appear at that door in the other room facing that direction. So I'll click OK, save that, let's try it out. So if I walk through there, fade to the scene, and there he is at the other one, ready to come into this one. Now if I walk back to the cave, or this one I did put the word to cave on, we haven't set that action up yet, but you can see when I walk there he actually ends up facing right, which we don't want him to do really. He faces right there, so we could do with removing that. Here when we set up the action of switching to the stair room, we've actually told him to face right once he gets there, so you don't need in here where it says door to cave. This should actually be facing the other way, so let's just check that. So he walks through here, the action tells him to face right when he arrives, so if I walk back this way he now faces left, and then we're going to put that transition in. So we're in the stair room, door to cave. Actions for this, you can already see the cursor changes. When somebody walks to that, we want them to change scene. We want the current character to end up facing forwards in the next scene. If somebody comes through that forward door, we want it to fade to that scene, and the character is going to be stood at cave entrance, door to stair room. Save that. We should now have set up that link between the two places, so we walk through that one and he appears here, and if we walk back through that one he appears there facing forwards as we said he would be. So it's that simple to set up the links between them. It's a bit confusing with this one. You would maybe expect if a character walked up into this particular door that they might come out to the bottom of this one. It is sometimes good to try and keep those directions set so that it feels logical, the direction you come from, but there's a really good reason for it specific to this game. So we've got the moving between different rooms. The next thing really that we want to try and set up is taking these items, actually being able to pick them up with the pickup action and them appear in your inventory. So that's going to be the next tutorial. So thank you very much for your time again. Hope you've enjoyed this one, and I'll see you back here for tutorial number 6.